see the folks out here. This is a free community event. We are in Eastside Arts Alliance right now. Make some noise for Eastside Arts Alliance. Welcome, y'all. Come on in. Let's be a little bit louder because today it is a beautiful Sunday. There is an Assata mural outside. So I'm gonna pass it off to my homegirl, Kamal, right here. And then we're gonna get it started. Thank y'all.
You know, we're hearing stories of our youth being attacked, of our youth facing different struggles with addiction and other kinds of harm that come across their paths. We're hearing about working with queer and trans communities and communities of color that have faced a lot of violence put upon us by the state. And so I would like to hear a little bit about how you try to make this work sustainable, how you try to make it impactful in the long term, because it's not always winning all of the time. We're not always making these big, significant strides. It's not always, you know, the greatest victory when a campaign is coming to the end.
Africans here, Africans everywhere, but Africans here in this country are at war. And in fact, we are losing, we're not winning. And we're losing on a myriad of fronts. It's from our education system to jobs being available, to the quality of the air, to the quality of soil, to police murders, to vigilante murders. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on, and it is incredibly depressing, it is incredibly heavy. And it is hard to get up and do it every day, but I think that for folks that have dedicated their lives to this work, that's just sort of what it is. You dedicated your life to this work because somewhere, somehow, you believe eventually it will get better. I have no expectation that that's going to happen in my lifetime, but the commitment that I made to my daughter is that every single day, no matter what, I will dedicate my life to making the world a better place for her.
When I think about, you know, sustainability and impact, I think about one of my students, right, who came to me. She recently got robbed, and I think it was on East 14th on her way home, maybe like 5 months ago, right? And she was undocumented, and through that happening right now, she's trying to, you know, file for some kind of what's it called? I think there's like a lot. Victims of crime, right? So she can get residency and all of that because of what happened to her and the trauma and the impact that it created, you know? And so one of the things that happened is she was in my class maybe a couple weeks after that happened to her. And so when I didn't know that had happened to her. It was after the class that she actually wrote it in a journal and talked about the reason that she asked to be in that class. And so during the class, I had the students make a spray. It was a different, they can use flower essences for different things. Right, there's protection sprays that they can use. They can use a calming spray for when they felt like really stressed out or really anxious, because some of them had said at the beginning that they had anxiety, right? For all these different things. But that particular day, I used flower essences to make sprays with them. And right now, she's actually my TA. She's helping me with the 9th graders because she's a senior. And it was really funny because she came up to me just a couple of days ago and she was just like, that was like maybe like a week or two ago. She was like, Betty, remember that spray that we made in class? And I was like, yeah. She's like, well, right now when I've been applying to colleges, I've just kind of been spraying it on me and it always makes me feel really good. So like, you know, that's sustainability to me. That's what it looks like, is to give, to see it in action in their lives, you know?
I think we've had for a long time, we've faced a situation where there was a lack of representation of people of color in many nonprofits, in the nonprofit world in general. And this is one of the things that is particularly frustrating for me, precisely because, you know, both the fact that I'm proud to be a Latina, but also because, you know, 2013 is really kind of a milestone year, because this is the, according to, I think the latest statistics, this is the first year when Latinos will be a majority of the population in California. So we are definitely now a state that has a majority of a population of people of color, but yet in many organizations and sometimes even in some, you know, government institutions, we continue to see gross underrepresentation and our voices are not being heard directly. We can't always, in a direct way, bring up issues that are of vital interest and that, you know, maybe other folks are not going to be as sensitive about or not be as informed or knowledgeable about.
Part of what I had the opportunity of doing when I was probably like 2 years ago was to actually go to the Philippines, and I asked the same question to the organizers there. And a lot of what they told me was that in order to do the work to get up every day, it is to see that there are folks or younger people who are going to inherit the messes that are created right now. So it's really to work to end a lot of the systems and to really take down the systems, but also to do it in a collective approach. So not just to do it individually. And I know here it's a lot of like individual, like you got to start. Like a lot of the youth are told like you need to shine, as opposed to really like let's shine together all together as a classroom. So it's a lot of the things that they were telling me was continuously it's your duty and it's to serve the people constantly every day when you get up. So I think that is something that a lot of the youth in Anakbayan, like that's what we practice, is to really serve the people and also to do it collectively. You're not here doing it on your own.
What we're doing right now in the high school with the classes is really targeted. So the youth that were chosen to be in this class were youth that had experienced really intense trauma throughout the year. So I had one of my students who was gang raped in October by different guys at a party. She was one of the people that was part of the class. We had another student who actually moved to Alameda County and became severely addicted to crack and then returned to our school. And so we were working with her on really, on becoming sober. She was also part of the class. I had another student who tried to commit suicide throughout the year who was in the class. And so we have all these different people that were part of this class. And I feel like the work that's happening right now at Rice High School is it's giving students literally like physical tools to like deal with the reactions of what's happening in their lives day to day, right? And so for me, it's really important to provide youth with those types of resources, right? Resources that are very directly related to using herbs to really particularly work on the trauma that happened through the type of abuse and violence that they're experiencing in their bodies, either that's happening at home, that's happening through the use of, through substance abuse, that's happening through what's happening in their families.
Seeking a way to help trans women in the Mission District in San Francisco, because there had been a number of them who had been targeted and who had been victims of violent incidents, and many of them were extremely reluctant to try to seek help from the police, sometimes possibly questioning their immigration status even though they're really not supposed to do that, or accusing them or implying that they might have been involved in sex work, even though in many cases that was not the case at all. But overall, this had the effect of making a lot of these Latinas in the Mission District really reluctant to rely on the police for help or to report a crime. Fortunately, the Human Rights Commission was able to get involved, even though under most normal circumstances it doesn't really have direct jurisdiction over San Francisco police matters. But they did, reach out to everyone involved, and they did get people to talk about, what some of the concerns are.
I would like to hear a little more about the legacy that you hope to leave for our people that are going to continue to do this work.
I know that I thought about it in those terms, and I think I probably said it, but a legacy of resistance, a legacy of strength, a legacy of overcoming, pride in who you are, not who those textbooks tell you are, and not what the television tells you you are.
We actually just celebrated Andres Bonifaccio's 150th birthday or anniversary. So he's this really militant youth who in 1896 actually led the movement to kick out the Spanish colonizers in the Philippines. So we study him as one of the legacies of our ongoing revolution in the Philippines. We also study the Kabataan Makabayan youth organization, who also led all of the militant movement, youth movement, doing a lot of protesting against the government and really changing the system in the Philippines. And I hope that what Anakbayan and what all the youth here and all the youth across the world can really leave behind is that the movements aren't only led by it's an intergenerational movement, but also that the youth play a crucial role in all of the movements across the world. And in taking down the three basic problems of the Philippines, that it is the youth who are going to be at the forefront, it is the youth and especially women youth who are going to really move the society towards the right direction. So I hope that's the legacy that we can leave behind, and that we're going to be the ones that they will study what we left behind. Yeah.
I always like to tell the youth, you know, specifically the things that they experience here in East Oakland is that their bodies and their lives are not disposable. And I think that a lot of them are like, better, why do we want to feel better? Like, doesn't matter, I'm just gonna end up getting shot maybe in the streets. Or I might end up dead like by 20, right? And so I think it's really difficult for a lot of our young people to see themselves living past high school, given the violence, given the stuff that's happening in the streets. And so I think, particularly here in East Oakland, what I really want to leave behind, the work that we're trying to do, even with the youth talking to each other about that, right? So having, for example, my students in the class now work with me and with the 9th graders to really bring that awareness to them about why their lives are important. The first goal is always to really get them to understand the value of their life and how them taking care of their bodies is an investment not only in themselves and in their families, but in the world.
What we're seeing at a local level in California is also going to be happening throughout the United States within about 20 or 30 years. And what we're going to be seeing is that, you know, people of color will slowly become the majority of the population in the United States. And after being, you know, a white-dominated country for, you know, hundreds of years, we are going to see some major changes happening for some of us maybe within our lifetime, but certainly within, you know, as short as 20 or 30 years, we are going to be seeing a huge change. And we have to remember that, you know, there's still a lot of wealth and power that's, you know, controlled by the richest people, by that 1%, the proverbial 1% we hear so much about, and admittedly the 1%, the people in the elite. It's a primarily white group, but we have to remember that those are the folks who are quite happy to exploit anyone, whether or not we're people of color. They'll exploit white working class people as well as, you know, working class people of color. So they're going to be happy for as long as they can to continue exploiting everyone. And what's more dangerous about this is that they are always very, very, very eager to use the proverbial, you know, white man strategy to divide and conquer. So what they do is, you know, they tend to get, you know, white working class people upset and to, you know, make them feel that communities of color are either the enemy or make a scapegoat out of us in some way or another form or another. And so we have to remember that even though, you know, a small elite, a small minority of the population controls so much wealth and resources, we still have the power of numbers that we are going to be able to overcome. If we are able to overcome, it's going to be by, you know, having strength in the number of people that turn out to vote, you know, being having the power to vote out people that are really completely contrary to our own economic interests, and making sure that we get the best qualified candidates that are going to be sensitive to everyone's interests.
Why do people do violence?
Did everybody hear that? The question is, why do people do violence? And this is from Sahara. And then we're going to take, I think maybe we'll take these other two questions too, just so you'll have a moment to collect your thoughts. Okay. Okay, we'll start here.
My name is Janae, and I want to know how come there's so much violence in the world with people and stuff like that.
Okay, so that's part 2 of the question.
My name is Zayden, and I want to know how good can we make the earth better? How can we make it better?
Hi Jaden, I think I'm going to address your question. It was one of, I think, the one that called to me. And so I think that we can make the world, the earth a better place by connecting to it. By just taking a moment to sit outside and just look at the trees and just thank them for cleaning our air and for shading us. You notice how trees give us shade? And they give everybody shade. They don't discriminate. They don't, right? They just shade everybody, right? And they don't tell you like, oh, I don't like your hair, you can't sit under me, like none of that. So trees can teach us a lot, right? And I think that it's really important for us to be able to go outside and like ask your families, like, how do we make food? How do we grow food? How do we, you know, why is it important to drink a lot of water? right? Like all of these things that can make the world a better place, right? Or maybe using, you know, taking shorter showers, like all these things. But the most important thing for me about how to make the world and the earth a better place is to connect to it, right? To just like close your eyes and feel the wind, right? And just be like, wow, the wind is taking oxygen into my body, it's allowing my lungs to breathe, which is why I'm even alive. I can open my eyes, I can move, I can do things because I have oxygen in my body. And so sometimes we take that for granted.
It's really important to decide which people you're talking about and where the violence is happening that you're talking about, right? So if you're talking about the violence inside of our communities, so why are Africans killing Africans or Latinos killing Latinos? Is that the violence you're talking about? Yeah? So there's a lot of reason for that, and I would say that the primary one, though, is poverty, lack of resources. There's a woman, she was my mentor, and one of the things that she used to say is if you don't allow people to make a living in the above ground economy, and by that she means being able to get a job, right, pay your bills, feed your family, people are gonna feed their families no matter what, right? So I think that's one reason. I think another reason, like I was talking earlier about the images that the media shows us, like on TV, like when you see Africans on TV, what do they normally look like, right? They're gangsters, or they're dope dealers, or they're this, they're that, right? You don't see them as scientists or lawyers or doctors. And also that we're taught, particularly Africans in particular, we're taught that our history started with slavery. Like the first thing that we ever were was slaves, which is a freaking lie.
I think a lot of violence happens when people want something really, really badly and they don't think or they know that they're not going to get it in a peaceful way, and that is what leads to a lot of violence. Also, and this is one that is probably important, you know, if you're gonna be taking history classes at some point in school, and sometimes those history books will, you know, give a very one-sided view of many things that happened in a very real way. A lot of that violence that goes back to the days of the settlers has to do with colonization, and that is the whole process by which white settlers from Europe came over and started taking over the land, you know, little by little, slowly at first, and then, you know, maybe a little bit faster and in a more violent way. And in doing that, they killed many Native Americans. They killed by the millions, and they became very violent. Sometimes in going about to, you know, sell new land, to conquer new land, and then they, you know, rely on you know, the whole institution of slavery. Unfortunately, you know, for much of the economic progress that happened in the early years. And so there was a whole, you know, violent culture to begin with in much of what happened in the early years of the United States, so that this whole society can in fact really, you know, live up to its aspirations of true freedom and equality for everyone, and so that, you know, no one group of people will enjoy, you know, more of the rewards of the economic process than others. And when we get to that point, I think there's a good bet that we will see a lot less violence around us.
One thing I would encourage you all to do is to continue to ask those questions, like how to make the world better. That's an excellent question, to keep asking that. So if you see something and you're like, that candle doesn't look right, like ask them, why is that candle right there? So to continuously ask questions, be curious about everything around you, and also if you have ideas, make them, if you have dreams, make them come to life, is what I'm saying. So for all the youth to really, if you see the world a certain way, but you want to see it in a different way, if you see the violence happening around you, but you don't want the violence to happen, it's to do something about it. To really make what you want to live, like the world that you want to live in, come to life.
You know, honoring Assata, I was just curious if y'all could touch a little bit upon the gender piece of doing this kind of work, and, you know, working with that intersectionality as well, and how to really integrate that piece into ourselves and into our communities.
Right, so sometimes it's even just about checking my own perceptions of myself as a female. But I am very cognizant of the fact that I take space both through my organization and in the work in a way that is very typically male, but I do that publicly, unapologetically, right? I take that space and encourage other women to do the same, as does Assata.
I think that's an interesting thing to bring up, especially in the Bay Area, where there are so many LGBTQIA2 spirit individuals. I think that it is important that we think about the ways that we make organizing spaces and community spaces safe for all kinds of people to throw down and do the work. And so, in addition to thinking about how people approach the work based on how they're being read by others, it's also really important to think about how we affirm people and how they identify and how they step into the room. And one part of that is checking our assumptions, not only the assumptions that we have for ourselves, but the assumptions that we have for other people. Just one word to help us close out strong from each person over there.
Short phrase, maybe.
Or maybe 3, maybe 4. If you want to come together and form a sentence, that's fine.
I think for me it's just trust and hope within and your body, yourselves, and your community.
Phrase. For me, it would be to resist and to build the revolution everywhere.
We could have built a sentence as I was leave a legacy of revolution, tear it down.
I would just say, sí se puede, yes we can.
And I would like to say thank you for everyone in the audience with your questions, for everyone on the panel, for Eddie for putting this together.